I don't claim to be an expert trapper of squirrels. I thought I'd give some ideas and some suggestions on how to trap squirrels and chipmunks, which I've been doing all summer. It's just more of a hobby than anything. It started out because they were chewing on my gas pipe on my deck, but then it kind of became a hobby slash somewhat obsession, and it got to be really fun to watch them. I work right there in my home, and I'm able to just watch outside all day long as I'm on the phone with customers and getting work done on the computer. So here's some suggestions. Number one is it's the placement, and you'll see I have it right underneath a large tree where there are squirrels that live up the tree, and they frequent this area as well as the chipmunks. Second of all, you'll notice I have scattered corn and bird seed all around the ground area, which attracts them. I picked up a large 10-pound bag over at Petco, a local pet store, for I think 13 bucks for a large 10-pound bag, which will probably last me at least one season, maybe two. Third is I found that it is currently fall time, and the chipmunks have changed their diet. They used to go for peanut butter. I could catch them pretty easily with peanut butter, but nowadays they seem to like the nuts, collecting them, saving them, and getting ready for the winter time. And so I threw in some black walnuts on the inside and a nice chewy black walnut in the front. The fourth thing is that they are very smart, or seem to be very smart, most of them, and they're very afraid of cages. So fourth thing is try and make it as inviting as possible and make them trust the cage. And one way to do that is to try and find level ground to put this on, so when they step on the cage it doesn't start rattling, it doesn't start moving and shifting. The fourth idea is to try and put things on the inside of the cage. If you can see, everywhere from outside the cage to halfway in to almost all the way to the trip plate, and then the pièce de résistance past the trip plate with a dab of peanut butter on the trip plate itself. And they start, they'll start on the outside of the cage and very trepidatiously look in. They will put their front paws up on the top, look around to see if anybody's looking, and it's almost as though they sense that it's a trap, and yet they'll be able to get food on the outside, and then they're safe. Then they'll come in a few inches and grab food, and they come back out and eat it, and they're safe. And they'll come in 6 inches and they'll be able to grab that nice black chewy walnut and get back out, and they're safe. And then they start to trust the cage, and then they'll come in a little bit further, and pretty soon they end up tripping that plate when they start going for the peanuts. The fourth or fifth or whatever number I'm on, I think the fifth idea is to be very careful to make sure that there is no food or any garbage or dirt or anything else underneath the trip plate. I can't tell you how many times I've had an animal come all the way in, and they'll pretty much do the jig on the trip plate and it won't fire the door, because I just randomly took corn and meal and threw it in the cage thinking, they'll go for it. And sure enough they did, but because a peanut or something got caught underneath the trip door, it didn't close the door and lock them in. So be very careful to make sure that afterwards you look inside, and that even if there is food underneath there, it's not going to affect the activity of the door itself. Take a stick and dig underneath the trip plate to make sure that there's nothing there. Sixth, you'll notice I put a peanut kind of halfway in, halfway out. They'll come to the outside of the cage. I wonder what that is. They'll grab it, smell it, taste it, pull it out. Everything's safe. They'll smell it. There's more of them in there that they can't seem to grab. And that's when they'll investigate to go to the front to get inside to get to those peanuts. But this way it gives them an idea of what's in there. What else? Seventh is the type of trap. These things are fantastic. I forgot the name of them. What is the name? something Barbie mouse traps or something like that. But man, they have like a hair trigger, and you have to be very careful setting them because they'll go off easily. But as soon as the rodent goes inside and pretty much even just touches that trip plate, it will fire the door so fast. The animals aren't harmed at all, but man, it shuts them in there, and it shuts them in there pretty well. However, that brings me to the 8th idea, and that is make sure that the trapdoor is functioning properly. I'm not they're all set and ready to go, so I'm not going to mess with them now. But you may notice that this one has kind of a little bend to it. This one is more straight. You have to make sure that the doors will close, and they'll close properly. So test them out before you do anything by letting them snap shut and making sure that that metal bar that's on top falls down. And that's I won't go into the details, but that's how it traps the animal in there. There's a metal bar that goes across, and once the door snaps shut, that metal bar slides down the door and traps them inside. And the problem is, if you have a bent door like this one appears to be, but it seems to close well, but if you have a bent door, then it's not going to give a good seal when it closes. And if there's no good seal, then depending upon the size of the animal, they can get out. And especially if that metal bar does not fall all the way down to the bottom, it might only fall halfway down and then it leaves a gap at the bottom, and they can sneak out, especially depending upon the size of the animal. The other thing I love about these traps here are that they're so small. The grain of the wire mesh, that I caught the smallest of mice, and they can't get out as long as the door shuts properly. And then the 10th or 9th or whatever I'm on, and the last thing that I can think of right now to be careful of, and that is making sure that there's no junk in the front, like leaves. Because when this door, in fact, I'm even going to move some of these out, when this door snaps shut, if there are leaves here, the leaves will get caught in the door, and that will hold the door open a little bit. I've lost a number of chipmunks this year so far because of that, where it'll spring shut and it'll seem to trap the animal in, but they end up getting out because there's weeds or something. As a matter of fact, here's one right here. There's weeds or something that gets in the way and of the door shutting completely. The door needs to shut all the way. This one here is a have a heart. I love it. I would buy this thing again in a heartbeat. Matter of fact, I might get another one instead of a multi-catch trap, which I also do have and do not like. It doesn't seem to work all that well, and I'll do probably another review on that. But this one right here is a self-pull. You just pull the handle back, it opens the door and locks shut. And as soon as the animal comes in, it traps it, and the handle swings forward, shuts the door. Animal will never get out of there. I've had situations where the animal has struggled for hours trying to get out. It won't get out, just won't get out. The have a heart makes an excellent trap, very thick gauge wire, and seems to work really well. And then when it comes to releasing the animal, it's a piece of cake. You just pull the handle back and the animal takes off. I think that there was something else I was going to mention, but I guess that's it. These ones here are, the smaller ones are for mice and chipmunks, and I have caught squirrels in here, believe it or not, but only the baby squirrels, just the tiny ones that are about the size of chipmunks. Anything bigger than that, a larger chipmunk adult will certainly not even attempt to go into this thing, but they will in here. It's built for chipmunk size, and it seems to do a phenomenal job. So those are just some ideas, suggestions, tips on how to be successful in trapping chipmunks, rodents, small things, squirrels. What else did I catch? Mice. I even caught a snake and a couple of birds that I've had to set free because the birds will come around, peck the corn, and will go in there and peck the plate. And that's somewhat annoying, but nonetheless. But anyway, I guess the last thing, this might be the 10th or the 11th thing, but the last thing I'll mention, and that is, this is really, I found it's kind of like an art form. You want to be kind of cautious on where you place everything. Again, you don't want to go underneath the trip plate. It might take you 15 minutes, might take you half an hour to get it ready. Have food on the outside of the crate, and just enough food to not fill them up as they're entering into the crate, but entice them to get to the back and to make sure nothing's under the trip plate. And you can see how I have the food perfectly placed there, so it looks attractive, it smells attractive, the peanut butter on the plate. And the reason why I say that is because when I first started trapping, I just haphazardly threw the things down. The food wasn't fresh. The peanut butter I put there the night before, or a couple days old, it might be a couple days old. And, you know, over time, they may not be great connoisseurs of food, but if there's peanut butter there that's been there for a few days, they might come all the way up to the trip plate, sniff it, and then turn around and walk away. But if the food is fresh, if the peanut butter is fresh, they will go after it. So it's kind of like an art form. Just you know, spend some time to make sure that those 10 or 11 things that I went over are completed, rather than just haphazardly throwing food in there and setting the trap and hope it, fingers crossed, it works well. So anyway, those are some ideas. Hopefully it helps.